Hello, this is the Happy Families podcast. So good of you to join us. Welcome if you're new to the pod. Every Wednesday, we have a chat with somebody who can shed some light on topics that we talk about a lot, but maybe have a different point of view to the one that I bring. Today, it's Dr. Dusty Hess, a nationally recognised functional medicine doctor, author, speaker, founder of Upstream Health. It's a transformative movement helping families reclaim their health. Through his visionary leadership and resources, including the Upstream Plus membership and the Upstream Plus magazine, he's raising a new standard of care rooted in functional medicine. Known for simplifying complex science, Dr. Dusty is a sought-after speaker at conferences and health summits and wellness events. His message inspires families to break free from chronic disease, lead with purpose, and build a legacy of health. I'm excited for today's conversation with Dr. Dusty Hess. Stay with us. That's next. G'day, welcome to the Happy Families podcast, where you get real parenting solutions every single day. This is Australia's most downloaded parenting podcast. As you probably know, Kylie and I have been on a bit of a health kick this year. One of the hardest things has been trying to work out how to not just avoid illness, but be genuinely healthy. So we're going a little bit sideways from where we normally talk on the pod. Normally it's all about parenting and relationships and emotional intelligence and discipline. Today we're actually talking about health with Dr. Dusty Hess. Upstream Health. You can go online to Upstream Health to find out more about what Dr. Dusty does. But I'm absolutely delighted to have him joining me on the podcast today. Where does this conversation find you, Dr. Dusty?
Yeah, Justin, I'm actually out in the Midwest right now in the United States.
Okay, and as opposed to Australia, cold at the moment.
Yeah, cold. It's actually snowing right now outside. So yeah, I'm not sweating in my office, that's for sure.
How many kids do you have?
We have 4.
Let's crack into this straight away. A lot of parents see meltdowns and anxiety and irritability and a lack of focus and inattention and all the other challenges that come with children. They assume that it's a child who is struggling with behaviour, like it's a behavioural issue. You argue that it's not always just about behaviour. There's a whole lot of biological factors that might be influencing how kids are thinking and feeling and acting. Say more about that.
Yeah, no, this is a great point, Justin. I think when we're talking about health, we're not just talking about disease, right? We're talking about a foundation, and the family is a huge network that provides a foundation for what that health looks like. So I think the first thing that parents need to hear is that a lot of us are looking for tips, hacks, and quick fixes, for what is often a deeper physiological issue. We're trying to quiet the symptom without understanding the source. But honestly, behavior is giving us information. We should see it as information, not as disconnection, And so sometimes the child isn't acting out as much as their body is really crying out. So if kids are eating real food or enough food, if they're underslept, overstimulated, living in constant stress state, that can absolutely show up as irritability, meltdowns, poor focus, and emotional volatility. And those body actions are something that we need to be listening to and be in tune to. So I think that that's where we have to be careful, because many parents are disciplining with the goal of producing children who behave well in public. But sometimes in that process, we can really unintentionally sideline the child's identity. We let outward performance become the target, but let cultural shame really pressure us into surface level correction. But real parenting, I believe, is deeper than that. We guide behavior. We also want to shape the child's internal world, their understanding, their buy-in, their physiology, and their sense of who they are. Because at the end of the day, we're not just creating compliant kids or simply getting them into adulthood. We're trying to raise future adults who have understanding, ownership, and the ability to regulate well. People really can step into the world and make it better. And that's what we're looking for. That gets a whole lot easier when we respect how they were designed.
I'll pick up on 2 things that you've said there. Number one, I found that if my children are sleep deprived, they are just going to be more difficult. Incidentally, that's the same with me. If I'm sleep, I rarely, if ever, look at Kylie and say, "Oh my goodness, we're so tired, but we're nailing it today." That's not how that works. So that's part of it. The other thing that I found, I know you said no hacks at this point anyway. We can talk about some hacks later. But what I have found is that if my children are irritable, if they're hard to work with, if they're acting out, if they're angry at each other or Kylie or I, it's amazing what happens once we give them a little bit of food. It's almost like their body is crying out for food, but they don't know how to articulate that. They don't even have the awareness of it. Once they've got some calories in their system, maybe a little bit of protein, something reasonably healthy that has gone into their body, all of a sudden they become wonderful humans again, and we can work with them once they've got some food in their system.
It's so true. And on the same flip side, it's hard for them to really understand what food is these days, like what actually is real food.
Yeah, wow. I really like the idea as well that we're not just trying to survive hard moments, but the way that you describe that, we're trying to build an environment where those moments become less frequent and our kids have more room to thrive. This idea that we're developing in them the ability to regulate, the capacity to show a level of control in their lives. You're upstream health, right? That's what it's called. You talk about getting
Hmm.
upstream. What does that
Hmm.
mean for a busy parent in everyday family life? Because the kids won't eat anything unless it comes out of a packet, or they don't have time to give them anything unless it came out of a packet because they're so busy trying to just get ahead. Cost of living, everything's getting harder, and they're just saying, I just need to stick you in front of the television, give you this stuff that's in a packet because I'm done, and I've still got 4 loads of washing to take care of, and I haven't done the shopping for
Hmm.
3 weeks, and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, no, that's really what I mean by getting upstream. It means we stop living only in reaction mode. We stop asking, how do I fix this behavior right now? We start asking a more important question. What in our everyday family life is either supporting this child's capacity or quietly working against it? And for a busy parent, that's exactly what we need to be thinking as far as like the good news that is present, because upstream usually starts much simpler than people think. A lot of people think it's so complicated and they're trying to figure out all the things that they need to do, but it's not about overhauling your entire life, especially not overnight. It's about looking at the basics, like we were talking about: food, sleep, rhythm, overload, connection, like these basic core principles, and asking where the biggest pressure point is right now, currently. What is the one thing in this child's world that, if we supported it better, that could change a lot downstream? And if we look at the individual, this isn't about all of our kids, because every single one of them has their own personality, their own things that make them tick. But maybe that might be stabilizing breakfast. For another, it might be protecting bedtime. For another, it might be reducing after school chaos or cutting back on overscheduling. So much overscheduling going on right now, especially within sports. It's no longer just show up for T-ball, but it's like, hey, those T-ball athletes have to have 3 practices a week, and it just gets so overwhelming. Upstream means we stop chasing every symptom and start strengthening the foundations, really. So when you do that, you're often not just reducing meltdowns, you're increasing the child's capacity to regulate, connect, recover, and grow. And that's exactly what gives parents hope, because you're not sitting in the back seat. You're putting yourself into a position where you're actually training them up in the way that they shall go. That next step is going to be shaping their future generations instead of waiting for symptoms to arise and then to try to fix them.
Okay, so this requires a high level of proactivity and competence on the part of parents. Parents have got to be able to stand back from what's going on and say, let's take a big picture view here. Maybe on Saturday or Sunday when the kids are occupied and I've got half an hour to myself, I'm going to work out a structure that is going to facilitate a better flow through the week. I'm going to work out what our meal list is going to be so we're not panicking and buying fast food or opening a packet of something. I'm going to talk with the kids about what their mornings need to look like so that we can function. To me, it seems as though your upstream model requires parents to be able to create that distance from what's going on in the moment so that they can create better moments because of the distance they've created.
This is really important, because I think one of the biggest things parents miss is that behavior and biology are not separate conversations. A child's ability to regulate emotionally is not just about maturity or discipline. It's also about whether their brain and body have the conditions they need to function well. And a lot of modern life quietly works against that. So take sleep, for example. We tend to think of poor sleep as just making a child tired. But even in adults, one night of severe sleep restriction around, let's say, 4 hours has been shown to measurably impair insulin sensitivity the very next day, almost to the point of a type 2 diabetic.
So talk more about that. What does it do if your insulin is affected that way because you've had a lousy night's sleep? You only had 4, maybe 5 hours of poor quality sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, speaking directly on the insulin front, you think there's so many different drivers of insulin. Number one, you're going to gain weight, because when you're stimulating insulin stays up. It doesn't matter how well you eat or how much you exercise. You're not going to be burning the fuel in your subcutaneous fat. So a lot of times what people are finding is they're burning the midnight oil, exercising at night. They're only getting 4 hours of sleep. They're eating perfectly throughout the day, and their cortisol rhythm is all over the place, and their insulin's still high. They're not losing the fat. And so, but instead of trying to control the insulin at that point, because this is what a lot of people are thinking right now, what we need to do is slow down and get sleep. And that right there could be the biggest mover for that specific individual or that child that's going to help them self-regulate. And when we get that metabolic stress under control, just after one bad night, when the biology is under stress, emotions usually get shakier too. Like there's so many different things that happen physiologically when that insulin or that cortisol or that circadian rhythm is disrupted.
And while the kids probably aren't out exercising, they are up on their screens. So kids might be getting 4, 6, 7 hours of sleep a night, which is not nearly enough for them because they've got access to their screens. And that's going to have impact, like you've said, on their emotional regulation, on their insulin production, on their metabolism generally, on their capacity to learn at school, their ability to be good with their friends. Like the flow on from that one thing is enormous. Today, it's Dr. Dusty Hess, a nationally recognised functional medicine doctor, author, speaker, founder of Upstream Health. It's a transformative movement helping families reclaim their health. I want to spend a bit more time on sleep. I know people know that things like food and sleep matter, but not how deeply. We've done several podcasts on the importance of sleep, but I love the way you're talking about it here. Let's talk about sleep, food, stress, and screen time and the impact that that has on emotion regulation in kids, probably more than parents would be aware.
Yeah, I think, what we were talking about previously where people don't even know what real food is anymore. I mean, you go into the grocery store, it's like, is this real? It's really difficult. And so you can imagine what our kids and our future generations are going to think unless we start to think more upstream and unless we start to change their trajectory and train our kids in what real food really is. Parents often think about food in terms of growth, but food is also brain fuel. So we have to train our children to decipher it way earlier in life if we plan to change fertility, if we plan to change any trajectory when it comes to our kids having a better life than we had.
So I'd love to geek out on this way more, but in the interest of time and also to make sure that other people don't fall asleep, let's talk about screen time and let's talk about stress.
Yeah. Stress is another big one. Chronic stress doesn't just create it's not just from a hard emotional day. I think that's what a lot of people think of stress. Like, oh, I'm not stressed. It's like, no, we have to think of stress from a totally different perspective. Physiological stress is a totally different animal. And a lot of people are being driven by this underlying stress that they don't even know is going on. And a lot of times within child development, especially in the literature, it shows that stress affects the HPA axis, which I'm not going to put people to sleep with that, but it's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and the communication between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. So if I were to bring that all down, Justin, to a simple way, it's really just the core systems for threat detection, impulse control, and regulation. And in plain English, when a child lives under too much load, their brain gets pulled more towards survival and less towards reflection, right? So this is why stress needs to be understood. It's not just like kids are in this environment. They're not like in a high level corporate job, so they don't have stress. They're just playing on the playground, right? No, we have to be aware of their environment and support them in a way with tools to be able to process that too. And then I would say screen time. This one really matters because it's just getting more and more. I mean, I don't know about you, but I find myself on a screen more and more these days. And I've got to figure out strategic ways to get away from it, to be able to manage it in a healthy way. And you could imagine our kids growing up in it.
It's a constant conversation in our family.
Constant.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it needs to be, we have to be intentional with everything, right? So you being intentional with your health choices and with your food and with your stress and with your screen time and with sleep, like all of these things, there's so many parents that aren't having those conversations. And I think that's the scary part. Is like we have to have the awareness, but it's one thing to be like, oh, I know sleep is important. I know stress is important. I know screens, we got to manage those a little bit more. Yeah. But don't you understand our situation? Like we don't have the time to really talk about that, or what do you actually have to do as far as resources to be able to teach that stuff? It's so basic. Do we have to teach it? It's like, yes, we have to teach it. The screens these days, if we do not teach the future and teach our next generation what to look out for and how to manage it, it will consume them because the trajectory is not healthy. So, there was a 2022 systematic review It was a meta-analysis. It covered 87 studies of more than 159,000 children, and they found that greater screen time was associated with more externalizing problems like aggression and inattention, and more internalizing problems like anxiety. And so these effects were small, but they were incredibly consistent. So we have to see the underlying metabolic disturbances that these screens are having on kids, but we can't just keep it from them. We have to help teach them and understand why. And that's really important.
That's the great challenge as well, because in spite of what you've just said, a lot of parents are like, yeah, I know I need to have the conversation. I know we talk about it all the time, but I can't get my kids to buy it. Like my kids just say, no, you don't know what you're talking about. My kids think that they know better. They think that it doesn't apply to them. I think that for a lot of parents, hearing this can probably be a little bit confronting, because there's always room for improvement. For some, it might be a bit freeing. They're like, okay, I now know where I need to go. It's a conversation that can really highlight just how exhausted and discouraged and even blamed a lot of parents might also feel when their kids are struggling. So if we were to wrap this up, what would you want the take-home message to be for parents who have heard our conversation about creating this environment that's going to help our children to behave better because the environment is more conducive to good health? What is the most valuable thing that we can leave with parents as we wrap up our chat?
Yeah, this is really important, because when we see all this dissonance, it's easy to get this victim mindset, everything in moderation, like, we're all going to be broken and dead in no time anyways, and they just throw in the white towel. And the first thing I'd want parents to hear is this, your child's struggle is not proof that you failed. Your exhaustion is not proof that hope is gone. That's the first thing that I'd want parents to hear. A lot of parents have simply just been trying to solve deep problems with shallow tools, especially from TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah.
And that's discouraging for anyone. But, when you begin to understand that behavior is information, that physiology matters, that small upstream shifts can change a lot downstream, you start to get your footing back. You start to feel like you're more in control. Because your child doesn't need your perfection. They need your understanding, your steadiness, and your willingness to just really keep building. So we're not just trying to get kids to adulthood. We're really raising future men and women who can bring strength, wisdom, and goodness into the world. So don't despise the small steps. Take the time, invest in them one step at a time. And if there's something that you don't know, learn about it. Find areas that you can be able to grow in so that you can help shape them with wisdom and knowledge. They matter more than you think. And there is more hope here than many parents can see in the middle of the struggle.
Dr. Dusty Hess, I appreciate your goodness. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Dusty Hess is a nationally recognized functional medicine doctor, author, speaker, and founder of Upstream Health. For more, we will link to Upstream Health in the show notes. What a great and informative and helpful conversation. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media with additional support and help from Mim Hammonds. If you'd like more info to make your family happier, you'll find it all at happyfamilies.com.au. Back tomorrow.